South America became the hottest investment story of the early 1820s. Money chased new republics, debts were floated on rumor, and fortunes were promised on pamphlet paper. The years 1822 to 1824 were the time of the great South American bubble. In the middle of that heat, the Rothschilds did something counterintuitive. They largely stayed out. From all this, the Rothschilds remained aloof, with one exception: Brazil. The lesson wasn't romance about the new world, it was discipline. Sit out the froth, lean in only where the state and the terms look sound. That discipline pays off a few years later in London, when the music stops. A banking crisis hits so hard that cash itself seems to vanish. Dozens of firms teeter. One leading institution stands at the edge, desperate for gold bars to keep the doors open. The Rothschilds' answer is logistical, not lyrical. Use the network. They pull bullion from multiple markets and funnel it toward the pressure point. The rescue of the bank was a remarkable achievement which owed everything to the international nature of the Rothschilds' operations. It's not just money, it's timing, information, careers, partners, and trust. In a system built on promises, they can make good on theirs faster than almost anyone. Moments like that rewrite pecking orders. In 1815, Barings and the Rothschilds are peers. Within roughly a decade, the Rothschild war chest is said to be more than 10 times Barings. That leap isn't only higher profits, it's policy. They plow earnings back into the business, compounding capital and widening their information and distribution edges. Scale follows. And scale in finance is leverage, the kind that lets you underwrite, syndicate, and, when needed, steady the market you help build. Contemporaries see it plainly. One especially striking passage describes the house as a real power, capable, quote, either to hinder or to promote, as it feels inclined, the movements and operations of potentates and even of the greatest European powers. Austria's maneuvers, Prussia's delays, these, people say, hinge on Rothschild cash flows. A second verdict adds, quote, the evidence that the Rothschilds established a network of private financial relationships with key public figures in Restoration Europe is therefore compelling. Influence isn't abstract here. It has a name, a maturity date, a coupon, and consequences. With influence comes visibility. After the wars, press freedoms widen, and the family's profile rises fast. Quote, even as early as 1816, Carl writes, the brothers are, quote, becoming very famous because, quote, these days a lot is written about us in consequence of the freedom of the press. Fame cuts both ways. Caricaturists go to work. Pamphleteers do too. Much of that attention is hostile, and a lot of it is about religion. As one historian sums up, quote, the Rothschilds were subjected markedly more vilification than glorification in the public sphere. One reason for this was their religion. To those who resent Jewish emancipation, the most successful capitalist family being Jewish is provocation enough. That animus saturates popular culture. Polemicists push it further, quote, the Jew, who may have no rights in the smallest German states, decides the fate of Europe. There's a paradox here worth sitting with. A people discriminated against in civic life, cast as omnipotent in financial life. The more their checks steady the system, the more their motives are impugned. The family tries to manage the narrative. Solomon enlists the conservative publicist Friedrich Gentz to write what he calls an attempt, quote, briefly and I hope not infelicitously, to explain the phenomenon of the greatness of this house, later published in the Brockhaus Encyclopedia. It's the first of many efforts to answer a hostile press with an official counterstory. They know reputations compound just like capital does, only faster. Meanwhile, the bond market teaches the brothers a principle they'll turn into doctrine. The price of peace shows up in the price of bonds. During a scare between Portugal and Spain, they throw their weight behind de-escalation, not out of pure idealism, but because war is bad for the securities they underwrite and hold. For the first time, the Rothschilds appreciated what a large stake they had in peace between the great powers. In the decade that follows, quote, the connection between international peace and bond market stability becomes a first principle of their policy. Finance and diplomacy aren't separate spheres, they're two sides of the same coupon. Now widen the frame to Jewish communal life, where their influence is just as concrete. Philanthropy, tzedakah in Jewish tradition, is not a side project, it's a standing line item. Across the 5 houses, you see the same pattern. Heavy giving to Jewish schools, synagogues, burial and relief societies, support for petitions and legal campaigns aimed at easing civic restrictions, emergency funds when violence or downturns strike. The logic is practical as well as principled. Educated, stable communities weather shocks better, and visible generosity counters the caricature of the grasping financier. Their communal commitments show up in politics too. The brothers raise Jewish concerns at high-level gatherings. Amschel even argues that Solomon should go to the Congress of X not for business reasons, but in the interest of the whole Jewry. They lend their names to delegations, their rooms to meetings, their correspondence networks to carry petitions. Money moves markets. It can also move ministers. All of this unfolds against a volatile backdrop for Jews across German lands. Frankfurt's riots are part of a wider attack on Jewish neighborhoods and businesses, a backlash to emancipation debates and the post-Napoleonic slump. The episode rattles the community and slows momentum for equal rights. Inside the family, reactions are colored by practice and temperament. Amschel in Frankfurt is the most observant, scrupulous about dietary laws, strict about the Sabbath, no letters, no business. Others, like Nathan in London, bend under the weight of commerce. He writes on the Sabbath, and over time sets kosher practice aside. Yet even the less observant double down on communal obligations, especially schools and relief groups. For them, philanthropy is a kind of covenant. If you must compromise on personal ritual for the sake of the firm, you compensate by lifting the community that made the firm possible. Quick sidebar for context. Shabbat, the Jewish day of rest, runs from Friday sunset to Saturday nightfall. It's marked by synagogue prayers, festive meals, and stepping away from work-like acts, writing, cooking, transactions, even electricity or driving in traditional practice. The point here isn't theology, it's time discipline. For a trading house living on Saturday mails, choosing to keep Shabbat, or choosing not to, signals priorities inside each branch. The brothers don't agree on everything. They do agree that the community's future is a responsibility, not a hobby. Then there's the family strategy, which was not a strategy at first, which keeps 5 houses aligned across 5 capitals. Intermarriage. This isn't written in the founding father's will, it evolves as a way to prevent drift and keep outsiders from gaining claims on the fortune. A Rothschild for a Rothschild, the thinking goes, strengthens the balance sheet and the trust sheet. It mirrors patterns in parts of the broader Jewish world where cousin marriage occurs. Modern genetics often discusses higher incidence of certain recessive conditions in endogamous populations. Tay-Sachs among Ashkenazi Jews is the example people cite. But whatever the science, the on-the-ground goal at the time is organizational, cohesion, control, continuity. Keep the capital inside, keep the information inside, and you can move faster than rivals who have to renegotiate trust every time they cut a deal.
If we zoom back out, a through line emerges. The Rothschilds' superpower isn't just finding yield, it's knowing when not to. They sit out manias, mobilize in panics, and then reinvest rather than cashing out. They parlay that discipline into influence and try, awkwardly, sometimes clumsily, to manage the reputational blowback that follows. They learned that peace lowers yields and raises values, and they behave accordingly. And within their community, they tried to be role models on their own terms, sometimes strictly religious, sometimes pragmatically flexible, but almost always generous to Jewish institutions, especially schools, relief groups, and rights campaigns that can lift an entire generation. That's why, by the late 1820s, observers can say with a straight face that a bank, really a family, has become, quote, a real power. Whether that sounds like praise or panic depends on where you're standing, but in the ledgers, in the classrooms they funded, and on the streets they helped calm, it's true enough to move markets and, for a time, to help move history.